Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Bob's Woodshop. This is going to be part 2 of the resawing series that I started last week. I did not like how my saw was sitting on the wheel, so I had to put up a support arm, and I put that support arm between my planer and my bandsaw, which you'll see here in a second. And this added a tremendous amount of stability on the saw so that the saw was not leaning over. So check this out. Here we go with the first cut. This is all done with a 2-tooth per inch Timberwolf blade, and this is all done in real time. So I'm very impressed with both the blade and the saw. And if you saw my first episode of this, my saw is on 4-inch wheels and it was leaning over as I was pushing. And this time around, it's much easier. I can just do pushing. Again, if you saw my first episode of this, I was having both push and pull on the saw so that I can get the log through the blade. And this time I can concentrate on just getting the log through the blade. You'll notice here the log shifted a little bit. It was not perfectly flat. And I ended up having to put in a couple more screws in those brackets so that the log did not do that rolling action. Very important. So you'll notice the camera is moving around. That's because I have my daughter helping me with the photography this time. I think that makes for a little bit more interesting video. So again, this stability bar that I put between the bandsaw and the planer is a huge help and made cutting up this particular log much easier. This piece of wood is a piece of maple that was cut down about a month ago, so it's still very wet. And got to put a decent amount of force on here. And you are supposed to let the saw do the work. So you might notice there were a couple times with the saw slowed down a little bit, and that's because I was pushing in a little bit too hard. So when I backed off the pressure, the blade was doing the work versus me doing the work. You'll notice the upper blade guard is just above the wood, which is where it's supposed to be. So both this video and the previous one, all I'm really doing is trying to experiment to see if my Grizzly saw is powerful enough to get through some of these logs. This is the first time I've really done any type of big resawing like this. I am considering a bigger bandsaw, but I'm really not sure if I need it because this is really performing pretty well. Here's where I got a little bit off center with the support arm, and the part that was on the planer popped off, so I got to come up with a different strategy to make sure that's held on there a little bit better. I'm also considering doing an outfeed table for longer pieces of logs. This is a fun way to use your saw and to come up with some free lumber. There's always lumber on Facebook Marketplace where people are cutting down trees and just putting big chunks of wood, firewood type pieces out on their curb. And so it's a great way to pick up some free lumber, especially if you're using smaller pieces like this. Pieces of wood that are coming off here could be made for tabletops, small tables, small bookcases, and certainly for treenware. This is a great source of wood. It's pretty much available everywhere. So what you got to really be careful is just make sure your fingers are nowhere near that blade, and the blade is adjusted correctly, that you've got a sharp blade in there. This is a relatively new blade. This is the second log that I've cut up with this blade, and it's still performing pretty well. I would have liked to seen a little bit more spalting in this particular log, as the tree that it came from, there was a lot more spalting in different pieces, and that's what I was really looking for. But again, this is more of an experiment of resawing than anything else. So you can see there's a fair amount of pressure that I'm putting on here. I really don't know the pounds per square inch, but again, let the blade do the work. And if you're binding down the saw, just back off and just, again, let the blade do the work. Just keep your fingers away from that blade. That's why I'm using push stick there. So this was a snowy Saturday in February. I'm recording this on Super Bowl Sunday. So I'm not trying to do any type of quarter sawing or anything. I'm just slab cutting all this. This is a small piece of wood, so yeah, I'm not going to be cutting and rotating this in different directions in order to come up with rift sawing, slab sawing, or quarter sawing. I'm just slab sawing all of it. And this is quite a bit of fun also. I mean, you're getting a lot of work done in a relatively short amount of time. I think I cut this whole piece up in less than a half of an hour. So for speed, I'm really impressed with this. It's moving along the wood pretty quickly, and it's producing very consistent 1.1/8 inch thick boards. I don't have any blade drift that's noticeable here, and it's going through quick. Like I said, this is all done in real time. I'm not speeding this up. Cut quality is also very good. And here I'm just trimming up the sides. I drew a line with a magic marker, and now I'm just cutting off the bark in preparation to do some stacking. And cutting this 1.1/8 inch thick wood is no problem at all. I think I ended up with about 7 pieces out of that log, and then some firewood for the rest of it. Here I'm just cutting off the ends just to make it a little bit more squared up, and cutting out any screw holes that I might have in there. So I'm just using my chop box for that. The Bosch glide saw works terrific. I love that saw. Okay, so these actually came out pretty good. I'm glad I tried this different technique with this support arm. This made a world of difference. It was much easier. I think this Timberwolf blade, I believe that's a 2-inch or 2 teeth per inch blade. Works great, and this saw is awesome. I really like this a lot. This is a 1.5 horsepower, 110 or 220. I've got it wired up for 110, and yeah, it works good. So this cheapy little sled works great. Had to use 2 screws here in order so it didn't roll. But yeah, perhaps I like doing this. Probably gonna make a new one of these that has the slots in it here. So this is a little bit more adjustable, and I don't have to mess around with the screws. So hope you like that. It's all working good. Thanks for tuning in again today to Bob's Woodshop, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.